You agreed with me at the beginning. This is one of the questions that all intelligent people think about. It's relevant to their life because the answer to it, even if we don't know it, determines how we should live today. And all I'm trying to get you to admit is that since you don't know any more than I do, it is the same leap of faith that I'm taking to say that there is, that you're taking to say that there isn't, because you don't have 1 ounce of evidence any more than I do. One way or the other.
Give him a round of applause. That's outstanding. Because after an hour and so sitting here and having explained this over and over again, you managed to get my position exactly wrong.
Hey everybody, this is Ruben. Welcome back to the Placebo Effect. So this episode's going to focus on my reaction to a video that I just watched. I watched a debate/conversation between Matt Dillahunty and Dinesh D'Souza. And I mean, the focus, of course, centered around God, but they talked about a bit of other topics as well. It's quite an interesting video. I'll have a link to it for sure to check it out. I encourage you guys to watch it if you want to. Although if you plan on watching it, definitely buckle your seatbelts for that one because it's a 2-hour long video. So if you're interested in watching it, then take the time to watch it. Although you could watch it in smaller chunks, I suppose. And this take is not so much a criticism about it or a critique about it as it is just more my reaction and observations, because one of the things I try to convey is my relative life experience and sharing that with people, and hopefully my testimony just continues to give people perspective about my conversion from atheism to Christianity and how my worldview has shifted dramatically in response to that. So this is a good context here because this is clearly two sides of the fence, right? The atheistic position and the believer's position. Although there wasn't a very strong conviction one way or the other, they didn't really focus on those type of positions per se. You could definitely tell that who was representative of which side of the argument. And so when I look backwards now and just kind of see an atheistic stance, one thing I can say for sure, which resonated with me very strongly, is just the boldness, confidence, and arrogance from that position. And Dillahunty is definitely not short of confidence or boldness, that's for sure. And it kind of struck a chord with me because I remember when I was an atheist and I used to have conversations of this nature, the default position tends to be to take the approach that the atheist is in the right, that their position is reasonable, and that their lack of belief is, by extension, a reasonable stance, and it is the believer's burden to try to provide enough information to sway the non-believer into a reason to believe. I mean, Dillahunty actually says this at one point in the video. He doesn't feel there is a reason to believe, and that's fine if that's his position, but that doesn't necessarily make it the correct position, right? And that was one thing that caught my attention because, you know, one of the interesting things about the worldview that has changed for me since being a believer is how just wrong that position feels now. You know, I believe in Christ, of course, and I have reasons to believe that. It begins with a very personal experience. Jesus came into my life, and my life has never been the same since. And that's always first and foremost. The biggest thing I want to get across is my personal experience begins with a personal relationship with Christ. And that's going to be true for all Christians that genuinely have a relationship with Christ. Their belief system is rooted in an actual relationship. So getting into a more abstract notion where you have to provide evidence or proof on God starts to take away from that personal nature. And I think that's one thing we want to remember about our faith walk, is that we are also called to give testimony, right? So again, that kind of goes back to what this is not necessarily a critique of the video, but I think the video itself is a good baseline because it can further a conversation, right? And my intro video just started with a context of having people understand how that conversation goes. And I have another couple of clips that I'll share as well. But before I get to that, let's just talk about the nature of evidence. One of the things that is used a lot by an atheist is that there is no evidence. And that's a very important thing to pay attention to, because you really have to nail down what they mean by evidence. And so, if you take the most basic definition of evidence, which is anything in support of an assertion, or an available body of information to support that a belief is true or valid, right? Then there's a lot of things that are evidence. People's testimony is evidence. One thing that I think makes a very strong case is the fact that since the beginning of human history, the worldview has existed with God in it as the default, as the baseline. And no matter how advanced we get in civilization, no matter how intelligent we get, the belief in God persists. It doesn't go away. Matter of fact, it's been the majority viewpoint to have a worldview with God in it. And that is evidence.
Nothing to say about the world beyond the observational world. Your reason is, in a sense, silent.
I have to go to the 5th century.
Okay, or today. But here's my point.
I accept whatever the data show, and I cannot go beyond that and claim that I'm reasonable.
Okay,
I can go beyond it. You clearly have. But I don't get to claim that I'm reasonable by saying, you and I have no evidence of what happens tomorrow, but I believe this.
Okay, well...
So actually, it is the reasonable position having a worldview with God in it. That is a rational position. And it's a little bit of an irrational position to believe in nothing. Speaking of belief, here's an interesting clip I'll share.
Because I'm not asking you to settle it.
Do you believe in life after death?
I do not believe that there is life after death.
Perfect. So your position and
hang
mine...
on. Okay. That is not the same as I believe there is no life after death. I'm saying, we both sat here and said we don't know what.
So one of the interesting things that Matt does here is he has a little bit of a wordplay, and I noticed that in watching this as an observation, that word games is something that an atheist does quite often. They're very strong in semantics. Matter of fact, the whole notion of atheism to begin with starts with belief in God or non-belief in God. And it's very common in today's world, an atheist will take this, well, it's not that I believe there is no God, it's that I lack belief. And I could talk about that more later. But in this case, back to the clip, right, Matt, he's asked directly by D'Souza, do you believe in an afterlife? And he says, I don't believe there is an afterlife. But then he does the word play, right? He says, that is not the same as saying, I believe there is no afterlife. Well, again, I think that's just semantic word games. That's like saying if I told somebody, I don't believe you're telling the truth, but that's not the same as saying, I think what you're stating is false. That's just word game semantics. It's word gymnastics. It's playing games. If you say you don't believe in an afterlife, then you don't believe. That's a truth claim. That's an affirmative position, even if it's in a negative context. And so you really want to make sure that you're understanding what people are saying and how they come across when they're saying it. Because if you say you don't believe in an afterlife, well, then you don't believe in an afterlife. And that is a truth claim. You actually have to now defend that position. It seems in today's world, atheists are taking more of this stance of sitting on their hands and trying to wait for a believer to present evidence to them. And that's fine if they want to do that, but you don't have to play that game. You don't have to be forced to give anybody evidence for anything. People can believe whatever they want to believe. And it is very reasonable to believe in God, especially if you have a personal relationship. Our personal life experience is the most real thing that we know as human beings. So you don't have to justify your life experience to anybody, much less an atheist. Well, so this is what I wanted to share with regards to this video. Again, this was about an observation and an opportunity to talk a little bit more about my walk, and not necessarily a criticism. I do encourage people to check out the video. It's an interesting take, and depending on what side of the fence you sit on, you will probably have a biased lens when you watch it. But hey, that's again part of the worldview, right? Non-believers are going to understand Dillahunty's perspective better, and believers hopefully will see where Dinesh is coming from. This is less of a debate, though, and it's more of a conversation, right? So take it for what it is. It's an interesting meeting between the two of them, and hopefully we'll see a future conversation between these two guys, because I think they have good perspectives that appeal to people one way or the other. And hopefully if you like some of my videos, you will want to subscribe to my channel. And that's all I have in this episode. God bless you and take care.